sitting down and staying down. Okay, are you happy now? Jesus. You guys piss me off with the shit that you say. You don't look like the kind of guy who would do something like that. You're a joke. Cops. I mean, you're some total cliche. I don't have to be here listening to you guys. What's that white stuff on you? I'm a baker. It's flour. You want to take a sample to the lab? You don't look like the kind of guy who would do something like that. What does that kind of guy who does something like that look like to a cop? Huh? You know nothing. You only know what you think you know. You see every kind of dirty business there is every night. Spending your working day in the fucking armpits of the city, and you still haven't learned shit about people. You're totally fucking blind and deaf like the fish that I've heard of, which spend their life back in some fucking cave. You got your cameras going? But I told you. And I'll tell you this only once. So you can set things up and make sure everything is working. I'm not doing this twice. You don't look like the kind of guy who would do something like that. Johnny said, I didn't look like any kind of guy at all. That's why you make me want to puke sitting here looking at you guys. Hey guys, this guy's our kind of guy. I can't believe he's that kind of guy. Well, I'm not your kind of guy. You guys are in the dark. If only you looked at people instead of through them, you would probably know that you can't sort guys like vegetables. This is a cabbage, it goes with cabbages. This is an eggplant, it goes with eggplants. That works for vegetables, but not for people. Johnny would have loved it if he was here. He would laugh his ass off, man. And I don't want to make him sound simple. Thinking, that was Johnny's problem. It was like his mind was going on all these tracks, like it had all these connections, and he was always replugging everything, crossing those wires over, till one could almost see the complicated mess of lines in his head. Like, he would wait till his eyes were closed for an hour, even before he went to bed at night. And then he would lay there and be up in a minute again. He would have gone on replugging all those wires till finally something would shot out in his head. It was like all those wires he was replugging. You know, that's what the problem was. And then he was a twitcher. Even in his sleep. Like a dog chasing a rabbit or being chased by a wolf. And I would watch Johnny and say, hey, what the hell you're dreaming you're chasing? And he would wake up and keep right on twitching. You know, the foot is going, the fingers are going, he's biting at his lip and digging at his cheek like a fucking junkie. He worked for a hospital, procuring. But he never got anything home except to tell stories about the nurses and orderlies trying to steal. He would tell lies. Like he said that he left his wife when he was 18 and really missed his little daughter. But he never had no kids. The wife, yeah, but the rest were lies. He, would used to shoot up, but he never worked up a habit. Johnny had this dirty habit. He would get his fingers going through his hair, and I would look over and say, "Ah, Johnny, stop it!" Because there would be this patch of red hair in the middle of all his blonde hair. And he would say, "What? Have I got myself bleeding again?" And he couldn't figure why basically a nice looking guy would fuck himself over like that. But it was all the wires that he was replugging all the time. Like, the only reason he had a good body was because he lifted weights. But he used them to blow off all his energy and not build himself up. He burned calories like nothing I ever saw. Ate more than me. And he was what? 5'6"? And he used to say that his body was an efficient machine. He wanted to start a delivery service. And he wanted to be the only delivery guy with a bicycle. He used to sit out and map out the routes from one place to another. He called himself the Metro Transit. Used to make practice runs during rush hour. But it was just a way to blow off all the nervous stuff he had. But it didn't work out. Because Johnny had no business sense. He made up this ad and put it in the local newspaper for 2 weeks running with our phone number on it. It was during the 2-week vacation he had. Only fuck up, the phone never rang once. No, that's not true. Once, 6 months later, I picked up the phone and this guy says, "Is it the Metro Transit?" And I said, "It used to be, but they sold their bicycle." Johnny was always like this. But then, what to do? Once, after that, he would have been good at it. Yeah. He would have been actually very good at it. So, I said to him that maybe he should work someplace where they used messenger service. But he was not interested in working for someone else. He had a regular job and he didn't want to work in an office. So I taught him to bake and asked him to be my partner. The money was good and he always had fresh bread. But he refused and continued working at the hospital. The only thing I didn't like was I worked nights and he worked days. Hell, that got a reaction, didn't it? Now you're thinking maybe he isn't our kind of guy after all. So one day I got off work at 7 and I'm eating at this place I always did. And Johnny's having his breakfast. He was, sort of completely disgruntled and he was thinking about the soccer team, Cosmos, how it disbanded. But then, I think they disbanded 5 years earlier. And he was thinking about it that morning. Both of us were married when we were young. And he said that he was gay now and had been fucking everything in sight for 5 years. Only he got frustrated with it and had been not been laid for a month. Then both of us got to bitching about our jobs and he got up and goes off for a minute and comes back and says, "Why don't we go around the corner to my apartment? Because we are taking up 2 seats at the counter and This business is based on volume. I said, no, you gotta go to work. But then he said, I just called in sick. The first time I met him, he called in sick. I never thought about it till right now. Jesus. All this talk about food makes me realize that I haven't eaten in a long time. Fuck it. Skip it. So, if you had said that I would be living with a guy, I would have said, go fuck yourself. And it was something that always surprised me, We slipped into this blissful, comfortable relationship. I would wake up and go into the living room, and he would be on a chair or something, twitching like he was delivering something somewhere. Or sometimes he would be in bed. And it always surprised me. I used to think, how? And then, what the hell do I know about all this? But then, if he had been some old hairy guy or something, probably nothing would have happened. But Johnny didn't have any hair on his body. It was almost like peach fuzz all over his body, and it felt like, skip it. I'm your kind of guy, right? I don't think, I don't analyze, I analyze. So, we had 3 years. We rented a car, traveled around a bit, and that was good. But then, after 3 years, he started getting sick, and things changed. But they were very good about it at the hospital. They even let him come to work for a while. But then, he would start digging at himself and bleed, and that became embarrassing for him. So, I got off work and come home in the morning, and he would be staring out the window, and he would say, I slept for 14 hours. It was like this blessing for him, like this miracle. He couldn't believe it. Everything about him that was going on in him was interesting to him. He was studying. I would say, what? And he would hold up his hand for me to be quiet for a long time. And he would say, I never would have believed that the pain could be so bad. It's amazing. And he had his intestines eaten out and all that. And he had insurance, and the hospital he worked in was good to him. They all came to visit him. But he didn't take the painkillers. He was furious about it. And then he got worse and started taking the painkillers. You could look at his expression on his face and say that he never thought he would do it. The nurses and staff were okay. They didn't come in our way too much. But what I couldn't believe was that I didn't have this disease. I got the fucking test done. It was negative. I did it again. Negative. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't figure it out because the first time I was with Johnny, I just fucked him and he lay there against me and jerked off. And that was sort of what we did for a while. That was our pattern. One falls into these routines, and then as time goes by, we get familiar with somebody, and I was all over it. No way I was not exposed to it 3 times a week for 3 years. What the hell was going on? I got to think that maybe he didn't have it. Maybe it was something else. But he had his friends at the hospital who offered to take him out of his misery. But he didn't want to take it. He wanted to see it through till the end. You see, my problem was I didn't know what he was really going through. I tried to help, I tried to spend as much time with him, told me inside out, and I didn't know what else to do. He wanted to come home to die in his bed. But we both wanted him to be home for the end. It was Christmas time. But then, on the day of his discharge, he just sank into this coma. Now, what I'm about to say gets bloody. So, if you're faint of heart, please cover your ears. All you fuckers out in TV land recording this for posterity, check your focus. This is hot shit. So, the nurse came by and I said that he was resting. She moved off with relief written on her face. I turned and looked at Johnny. There was a look of confusion in his face. Even though he knew that death was coming, it had caught him by surprise. Me too. I took off my clothes and laid down next to him. I held him close to me for a long time. He was still warm, but he was no longer my Johnny. I could hear my heart thump erratically against his cold back. My warm tears flowed into his hair. I stifled my sobs. I felt disoriented like an abandoned child in a busy train station. Well, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. So, I took out my switchblade and sliced into his cheek, where he used to dig into, and on his chest, where he used to gouge out these marks. And when the blood came out, I licked it off him, cleaned him up. My face was covered with his blood. And then the nurse came by, screamed like her arse was on fire, and called the cops. But the hospital staff were nice enough to let me hold him till you guys came. I guess they were afraid of me, or maybe because of all that blood. They must have thought that I was crazy, because I'm not that kind of guy who would do something like that, right? What they must have thought was that I had killed him over some silly lovers' fight. I wouldn't have minded losing him to another man. But losing him like this? To a fucking disease? So, if this time around I don't get the disease, I'm well and truly fucked. But I guess there is some comfort in knowing that I did what I could to ease him out of his misery in his end of days. So, are you happy now?